The 1935 Labor Day hurricane was a catastrophic storm that destroyed the Florida Keys as a Category 5. The hurricane claimed the lives of 485 people. 260 of those victims were World War I veterans. Due to the 1935 Labor Day hurricane, organizations like the Weather Bureau implemented more advanced hurricane preparations. Henceforth, more organizations started to form to prevent further damage. As we get into this story, you will find out how this hurricane was a turning point for hurricane preparation. Before the 1935 Labor Day hurricane preparations were practically non-existent. There were no hurricane warning systems, no organized evacuation plans, and no centralized agency responsible for coordinating a disaster response. But before we get into the details of the storm, let us set the scene a year before. Veterans went down to the Florida Keys because they were jobless from after World War I, and they were offered a job to build bridges and roads. However, these veterans were only paid a measly $30 a month for their hard work. The Keys needed this help, though, because they were going through the Great Depression. But suddenly, a windy thunderstorm rolled off the coast of Africa and began into the Atlantic Ocean. Even though people thought this was just a simple storm, all the conditions were right for it to evolve into a tropical storm. Meteorologists did not have the technology available to track hurricanes in 1935. The first signs of conditions favorable to this disturbance's origins were noted during the last 2 to 3 days of August.
People did not think much of this hurricane because they thought it was just a tropical storm. The storm very quickly developed into a Category 5. The Labor Day hurricane hit the Florida Keys on September 2, 1935. That day is also when the hurricane reached its peak intensity of 200-mile-per-hour winds and 892 millibars of pressure, making it the most intense hurricane to ever make landfall in the U.S. A train on the way to Key West to bring supplies crashed due to its storm's harsh and intense winds. It was blown off the tracks. Only 2 carts were still on tracks. Thankfully, everybody survived that accident. Even if people wanted to leave, they couldn't, because there was no certain evacuation route for hurricanes back then. Although today there are many sources you can acquire detailing what to pack in a hurricane kit and evacuation routes you can take. While the people did not leave the Keys, they did not have anywhere to stay. Almost every single building was demolished. The roads, ferries, bridges that people used to get from island to island were gone, destroyed. This shows how deadly the hurricane was and why people wanted to prepare for hurricanes better in the future. The main islands that were most damaged were Long Island, Craig Island, Upper Matecumbe, and Lower Matecumbe, while the hurricane continued north and went through Georgia and the Carolinas, but weakened greatly as it ascended. The storm caused many deaths, but here is an interview with Alma Pinder-Dowen, a survivor, and her experience with the storm.
Horrible images of the 1935 Labor Day hurricane are in black and white to nearly everyone, but not 96-year-old Alma Pinder-Dalton. Hers are in living color.
There was 4 people killed in the house that we was in.
Alma was just an 11-year-old girl when the Category 5 storm struck the upper Florida Keys, where generations of her family had lived.
Well, you know, they had been through a lot of storms before here, and they'd never had anything like that before.
No one had, not before or since.
It was almost like a large tornado, just kind of rolling right on through the Keys.
Winds reached 200 miles per hour.
And all of a sudden, the whole house disappeared. All of us were thrown outside, so we were out in the water then.
She says the wind was so strong, clothes and skin were torn from bodies.
Everybody's ears was bare. You know, it just peeled the ears, the skin off their ears. They didn't have any idea that the ocean was coming in like that.
A map in the Alamorada Library lists the names of the dead, many of them World War I veterans, in the Keys to help build the overseas highway. It also shows how far away bodies were discovered after the storm.
We moved back down here in April. There was nothing. Well, there wasn't much here before then anyhow, but it was even less here then.
One of less than a handful of survivors still alive today. Alma hopes no one else will have to go through what she did ever again.
The hurricane's damage was no less severe than the loss of life either. The storm cost $100 million in 1935. That equates to $22.39 billion in present-day U.S. currency. After this hurricane settlement, one of the most significant advancements in the hurricane preparation history came in the 1950s with the development of the hurricane hunting aircraft. These planes were equipped with specialized instruments that allowed meteorologists to gather data on hurricanes from the air. This provided more accurate forecasts and warnings. However, the 1935 Labor Day hurricane also was a wake-up call for the government and public to take hurricane preparation more seriously. In the years following the storm, the government began to invest more resources into hurricane research and preparations. The National Weather Service was established in 1938, and it began to issue hurricane warnings and forecasts to help communities prepare for storms in the future. This deadly storm changed the way hurricanes are viewed and how to prepare for them, causing less loss of life and less damage all over the world.